the inhabitants of Canaan. They left the Canaanites in Canaan to dwell with them instead of being completely wiped out like God told them to do. God told them to wipe out the Canaanites, and they didn't. Because of that, the idolatries and the beliefs of worshiping false gods got intertwined with worshiping God, and God is a jealous God. There is no other before him. Well, as the scripture we have just read says, worshiping false gods is the same thing as devilry. It is the same thing as worship is devil worship and idolatry. The devil came and tempted. Satan's not specifically mentioned in the book of Judges, but like, for example, like the calf, the golden calf in the book of Exodus, we can see that he is from the very beginning, when he tempted Adam and Eve, he has been the tempter ever since. He tempts people. That's what he does. Well, throughout the book of Judges, God's people were tempted with idolatry, and because their fathers had died and didn't have, the younger generation didn't have a testimony or know God for themselves, they strayed away from God and ended up getting into idolatry, worshiping those false gods through that temptation. This happens multiple times throughout the book of Judges. God would set up a judge to deliver them out of the idolatry. They would get sold into the hands of idolaters for God to show them basically the results of what they were doing, the results of the devil worship. And then when they were done, or when they had repented and turned away from that, God raised up a judge to deliver them out of the hands of the idolaters each and every time. And God repaid in full with vengeance all the violence and suffering that was brought upon the people of God by the idolaters. Well, this happens multiple times. We just got done with chapter 8, talking about Gideon and Gideon delivering raised up a deliverer to deliver the children of God out of the hands of the Midianites and the children of the east. He did that, and then he passed on. Now we're at the part we're going to see what happens after Gideon. In chapter 8, the Bible says that he made an ephod, which it basically, the children of Israel went a-whoring after it, meaning they got the metaphor, they got in bed with false gods, that they made their bed, then they had to lay in it. Well, Gideon made an ephod, which is a shoulder piece for the priest, that was made out of solid gold. And because it was coveted there weren't any false gods involved with this idolatry, but because it was an item that was coveted so much and it was valued, because it was valued above God, it became idolatry. It was the same as the sin of idolatry, the same as devil worship. So God, we are seeing now that they had peace up until starting in chapter 9. We're past the ephod now, and we're seeing where not only where all the idolatry came into play, but Abimelech. We're starting with Abimelech in chapter 9. Verse 1, and Abimelech the son of Jerubbaal went to Shechem unto his mother's brethren, and communed with them, and with all the family of the house of his mother's father, saying, Speak, I pray you, in the ears of all the men of Shechem, whether it is better for you, Either that all the sons of Jerubbaal, which is Gideon, Gideon was nicknamed Jerubbaal, meaning Baal will contend. Will face off and Baal will lose. Which are 70 persons reign over you, or that one reign over you. Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh. So, Abimelech means father of a king, but what we come to know is he's a very selfish and arrogant person. Some of the qualities of the father weren't passed on to the son in this case, to his son. So we're going to see exactly how he tries to get himself in control of the city of Shechem and what he does to get that position. Shechem just means ridge. It's a place in Palestine. Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh. So Abimelech is saying, remember, I'm your flesh and blood. We're related. Would you rather all my other brothers reign over you and me, or just me? Seeing as how you know me, is what he's saying here. And his mother's brethren spake of him in the ears of all the men of Shechem, and all these words, and their hearts inclined, which means they were obligated or felt obligated to follow Abimelech, for he said, he is our brother. He played the we're related card, so you owe it to me. Now Jesus said, the same that loves the Lord is the same as my mother, brother, and sister. Abimelech did not have the love of the Lord in him. That's why he was full of wickedness. And gave him 70. They said he is our brother, and they gave him 70 pieces of silver out of the house of Baal-berith. Baal-berith meaning it was part of their belief in it's right here. It means so the devil likes to take things and twist them, take what God gives and twist them. Well, Baal-berith meaning Baal of the covenant. They were celebrating their covenant with Satan, is what it was. And so this house of idolatry, gave him 70 pieces of silver out of that house. So 1 piece of silver for every brother, wherewith Abimelech hired vain and light persons which followed him. Vain meaning empty. There was no virtue or a virtuous value in them at all. They had no values. And light persons meaning they were arrogant. And he went unto his father's house at Ophrah and slew his brethren, the sons of Jerubbaal. So he massacred his entire family, being 70 persons, which is 70 people, upon one stone. Notwithstanding, yet Jotham, the youngest of Jerubbaal, was left, for he hid himself. Now, Jotham, I think it's amazing, because Jotham is really, he is the person who, he doesn't stand up to Abimelech, but he tries to sway the people back to God. And his name is Jehovah is Perfect. So the son that was named Jehovah is Perfect is reflecting the likeness and values of a son that loves the Lord and follows him and tries to lead the people out of the path of idolatry. Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left, for he hid himself. And all the men of Shechem gathered together, and all the house of Milo, and went and made Abimelech king by the plain of the pillar that was in Shechem. Milo, the house of Milo means it was a fortified city. But made him the pillar of the plain of the pillar that was in Shechem, meaning they made him the center. It was in the very center of Shechem, and they put him in as the very center of their lives and in control. They idolized him as a king. And when they told it to Jotham, and went and stood on top of Mount, he went and stood on top of Mount Gerizim and lifted up his voice and cried and said unto them, Hearken unto me, ye men of Shechem, that God may hearken unto you. Gerim means it's specifically to cut off or to render. So he went in a place that was isolated, and basically a place that he went to this place that was there wasn't a whole lot of traffic flow through it, and he told them that similar to a parable, but it wasn't about the kingdom of heaven. It was a story in comparison to the leader they had chose. And starting in verse 9, or verse 8, God may hearken unto me, men of Shechem, that God may hearken unto you. The trees went forth in a time to anoint a king over them, and they said to the olive tree, Reign thou over us. But the olive tree said unto them, Should I leave my fatness, wherewith by me they honor God and man, and go to be promoted over the trees? Now, he's saying, should I leave my fatness? Fatness in this case from the olive tree means an abundance. Should I leave my abundance to go and reign over them? Next, basically, he's saying, should I leave the blessings of God to go reign over idolaters when God has placed me here and blessed me with everything I have for a reason? So that was the olive tree. And then he said, and the tree said to the fig tree, Come thou and reign over us. But the fig tree said unto them, Should I forsake my sweetness and my good fruit and be promoted over the trees? So should we forsake our sweetness, our kindness, our fruits of the Spirit? Should we forsake those good fruits for a tyrannic and unjustly rulership? Rhetorically speaking, it's a rhetorical question, but what he's getting at is you didn't choose the right thing by choosing Abimelech. And then said the trees unto the vine, Come thou and reign over us. And the vine said unto them, Should I leave my wine, which cheereth God and man, to go be promoted over the trees? Now the vine means effervesce, it's to bubble up with joy. So with that and the fatness, should we leave our abundance of joy, our salvation, our fruits of the Spirit, our gifts, should we leave all our fruits and everything behind to rule over wicked people? And the bramble said unto the trees, If truth you anoint me king over you. Then said all the trees unto the bramble, which a bramble is a thorn bush, Come thou and reign over us. And the bramble said unto the trees, If in truth ye anoint me king over you, then come and put your trust in my shadow. If not, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. So he's saying, choose me or be devoured by fire. He's saying, the bramble is being compared to, I want to rule out of fear instead out of justly and kindness that everybody else is ruling out of. This bramble's saying that not only that he's going to rule out of fear, but he's saying, put your trust in me, if not be devoured by the fire. And thorns, this is a thorn bush, so it's literally choking the life out of the other plants. This is the kind of ruler he's saying that Abimelech was. Are you really choosing this man to be your ruler? Now, therefore, if you have done right, truly and sincerely, in that you have made Abimelech king, and you have dealt with Jerubbaal, which is Gideon, and his house, and have done unto him according to the deserving of his hands, and this tells the reason. Verse 17 and 18 tell the reason. For my father fought for you and adventured his life far and delivered you out of the hand of Midian. And you have risen up against my father's house this day and have slain his sons, 70 persons, upon one stone, and have made Abimelech, the son of his maidservant, king over the men of Shechem, because he is your brother. If you then have dealt truly and sincerely with Jerubbaal, or with Gideon, and with his house this day, then rejoice ye in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. But if not, let fire come from Abimelech and devour the men of Shechem. So that fire was also prophetic, for if he was speaking prophetically, but he was saying if that's true, then let basically be devoured by the flame, be devoured by fire, is what he's saying here. It was in actuality a curse that Jotham had spoke in response to all the idolaters plotting against his house and the wicked men that later we see come to pass. But it was in return for them, it was in return for their wickedness. Let fire come out from Abimelech and devour the men of Shechem in the house of Milo, and let fire come from out of the men of Shechem, and from out of the house of Shechem, and from the house of Milo, and devour Abimelech. And Jotham ran away and fled, went into Beer, and dwelt there, for fear of Abimelech his brother. Jotham was smart. Beer means well. It was a place with a well that he could drink from. So he would have sustenance while he hid. And he dwelt there in fear of Abimelech his brother. When Abimelech had reigned 3 years over Israel, then God had sent an evil spirit between Abimelech, the men of Shechem, the men of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech. So God took things into his hands, and he sent this wicked spirit to turn the men on themselves and return in repayment of their wickedness. The fire could also be symbolism of hell's fire or God's wrath, what they would do, what would happen, basically the punishment and for the crime he committed. When Abimelech here we go. Then God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the men of Shechem, and the men of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech, that the cruelty done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might come, and their blood be laid upon Abimelech their brother, which slew them, and upon the men of Shechem, which aided him in the killing of his brethren. And the men of Shechem set liars in wait for him on top of the mountain. What liars in wait were ambushers. They waited to ambush him at the top of the mountain. And they robbed all that came along the way by them, and it was told to Abimelech. And Gaal the son of Ebed, Gaal meaning loathing, and son of Ebed meaning son of a servant, came with his brother and went over to Shechem, and the men of Shechem put their confidence in him. And they went out into the fields and gathered their vineyards and trode the grapes and made merry, and went into the house of their God and did eat and drink and cursed Abimelech. And Gaal the son of Ebed said, Who is Abimelech? Who is Shechem that we should serve him? Is not the son of the son of Jerubbaal, son of Gideon, and Zebul his officer? Serve the men of Hamor, the father of Shechem? For why do we serve him? they're wondering, why do we serve Abimelech? And would to God this people were under my hand, then would I remove Abimelech? And he said to Abimelech, increase thine army and come out. So we're seeing that Abimelech and the city of Shechem is being challenged by this man named Gaal. And Abimelech's main officer, Zebul. And when Zebul, the ruler of the city, heard the words of Gaal, the son of Ebed, his anger was kindled. And he sent messages unto Abimelech privily, saying, behold, Gaal, the son of Ebed, and his brethren to come to Shechem, and behold, they fortify the city against thee. Zebul means dwelling place. And they fortify the city against thee. Verse 32, now therefore up by night, thou and thy people that is with thee, and lie in wait in the field. Again, they're waiting to ambush. Now, this man named Gaal, they said he prayed to his God, but he was not a servant of the Lord, the God. So because he was not a servant of God, he was not able to take down Abimelech. Had he served God, God would have been with him in his faith, and he would have been able to take down the idolaters. So neither one of them had served God. And Abimelech rose up, and all the people that were with him by night, and laid wait in Shechem in 4 companies. They divided themselves into 4 and surrounded the city of Shechem. And Gaal the son of Ebed went out and stood in the entering of the gate of the city. And Abimelech rose up, and the people that were with him, from lying in wait. And when Gaal saw the people, he said to Zebul, behold, there come people down from top the mountains. And Zebul said unto him, thou seest the shadow of the mountains as if they were men. So he's saying, he's trying to trick him and saying, we really don't have people here. You're seeing things. And Gaal spoke again and said, see, there come people down by the middle of the land, and another company lay along the plain of Minimum, a place of covering. And Zebul said unto him, where is now thy mouth wherewith thou saidest, who is Abimelech, that we should serve him? Is not this the people that thou hast despised? Go out, I pray now, and fight with them. And Gaal went out before the men of Shechem and fought with Abimelech. And Abimelech chased him, and he fled before him, and many were overthrown and wounded, even to the entering of the gate. So the ambush had been successful. They had thwarted his plan. Gaal's plan to overtake Abimelech. And Abimelech dwelt at Arumah, and Zebul thrust out Gaal and his brethren, that they should not dwell in Shechem. And it came to pass in the morning that the people went out into the field, and they took Abimelech, and they took the people and divided them into 3 companies, and lie in wait in the field. Again, they're waiting for an ambush. And looked, and behold, the people were come forth out of the city, and he rose up again up against them and smote them. And Abimelech and the company that was with him rushed forward and stood in the entering of the gate of the city, which was the city of Shechem. And the 2 other companies ran upon all the people that were in the fields and slew them. And Abimelech fought against the city all the day, and he took the city and slew the people that were therein, and beat down the city and sowed it with salt. And when the men of the tower of Shechem heard that, they entered into an hold of the house of the god Berith. So they were serving the false god Berith. And it was told to Abimelech that all the men of the tower of Shechem were gathered together. So they gathered in the tower in the middle of Shechem. And Abimelech got to Mount Zalmon. So Abimelech had ended up wiping out Gael and all his men. Now he went to the house of Berith, and this was in the tower of Shechem that they were gathered together. And Abimelech got him up to the Mount Zalmon, which means it was a place of shade, a shady place of covering, which people found refuge out of the sun on hot days. He and all the people that were with him and Abimelech took an axe in his hand and cut down a bow from the trees. He fashioned a bow and arrow from the trees and took it and laid it on his shoulder and said unto the people that were with him, "What you see me do, make haste and as I have done." And all the people likewise cut down every man his bow. Excuse me, it was a bow is actually translation for branch. But every man had cut down his bow and followed Abimelech and put them to the hold and set hold and fire upon them, so that all the men of the tower of Shechem died also, about 1,000 men and women. So they used these sticks basically to light a fire around the tower of Shechem and burn the whole place to the ground, the men and the women. Then Abimelech and Thebez encamped against Thebez and took it. Thebez meaning whiteness, or a white. Basically, it was a place where it had snowed a lot. But there was a strong tower within the city, and thither, which means there, fled all the men and women and all they of the city, and shut it to them, and got them up to the top of the tower. And Abimelech came unto the tower and fought against it, and went hard unto the door of the tower to burn with fire. And a certain woman cast a piece of millstone upon Abimelech's head to break his skull. Then he called hastily unto his young man, his armor bearer, and said to him, "Draw thy sword and slay me, that men say not, a woman slew him." And his young man thrust him through, and he died. When the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, they departed every man into his place. And God rendered the wickedness of Abimelech, which he did unto his father, slaying his 70 brethren. And all the evil of the men of Shechem and God render upon their heads, and upon them came the curse of Jotham and the son of Jerubbaal. So the curse that he spoke about fire, that happened. They got caught in the fire in the tower. Basically what happened is God sent an evil spirit to confound them. They fought amongst themselves, and even though there wasn't a judge to bring them down, God, by his hand, brought down all the idolaters, especially Abimelech, for slaying the good children that had followed him and doing evil for the house of Jerubbaal, the house of Gideon. And that curse had come to pass, and God rendered all the evil back to those men, which means he repaid them everything that they were due for their sins. That's it for chapter 9. Chapter 10 we're going to get into next time. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Questions? Yes, go ahead. Who had a question? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought somebody said question. Oh, does anybody